harmonious understanding climbed out of Earth's atmosphere in silence. The delegation sat in their quarters, each lost in their own thoughts. Behind them, the blue planet grew smaller and smaller, until it was just another dot of light among billions. Ambassador Velkith spent the journey home writing her report. She chose every word with extreme care. She described the defiance in technical detail. She explained the history of humanity's secret preparation. She outlined Admiral Joe's terms without comment or judgment, but she knew the council would not read her words calmly. She knew they would see only the threat, only the challenge to everything they had built. The trip home took 6 standard days. When the harmonious understanding docked at Central Station, the council was already waiting. 47 species, represented by their greatest minds and leaders, gathered in the Hall of Unity to hear the delegation's report. Velkith stood before them and told the truth. When she finished, the hall erupted into chaos. "Destroy them," shouted the representative from the Cathra homeworld, his scales burning red. "Send the fleet. Reduce their world to ash before this infection spreads." That would prove their point, countered a delegate from the Orvani Trade Federation. "Other primitive species would see us as tyrants. The economic consequences alone with economics. You speak of economics when our entire system faces challenge." The arguments raged for hours. Hawks demanded war. Doves pleaded for negotiation. Others suggested compromise, isolation, or simply pretending the encounter never happened. Elder Thumb watched it all with tired eyes. He had lived long enough to see the patterns of history repeat themselves. Fear always looked for enemies. Pride always refused to bend. But somewhere in the chaos, there was usually wisdom waiting to be heard. Finally, the oldest member of the council raised her hand. She was a Molari like Thum, ancient beyond measure, her skin almost translucent with age. When she spoke, her voice was soft, but the hall fell silent immediately. "I have read the minds of 1,000 species," she said. "I have felt their hopes and fears, their dreams and nightmares, and I tell you now, we have never encountered anything like these humans." She turned to face the assembly. "They are violent, chaotic, emotional. They fight among themselves constantly. By every measure, they should have destroyed themselves long ago." She paused, but they did not. Instead, they looked up at the stars, saw us watching, and began to prepare. In secret, in silence. For 73 years, the hall remained quiet. They built impossible ships with impossible technology. They maintained impossible secrecy across a divided world. They did all of this not because they wanted war, but because they wanted to meet us as equals. The ancient Molari smiled, a rare expression for her kind. And now they have. The debates continued for 3 weeks. Fleets were mobilized, then stood down. Threats were drafted, then discarded. Economic sanctions were considered and rejected. In the end, the council reached a conclusion that surprised no one who had listened to the ancient Holari. They would send another delegation, this time with genuine offers of partnership. Admiral Joe received the message on a clear morning, standing on the deck of the Defiance. The ocean was calm. The sky was blue. And for the first time in 73 years, the weight on her shoulders felt a little lighter. "They are coming back," she told her officers. "Different delegation, different terms. They want to talk." Round her, the crew allowed themselves small smiles. Some had spent their entire careers preparing for this moment. Some had given up families, futures, normal lives all for a chance that might never come. Now it had come, and they had not been found wanting. The second meeting took place on the surface, not aboard a ship or a station, but on solid ground, in a building constructed specifically for the occasion. The new delegation arrived with gifts, technology, medical advances, star charts, everything the Concord usually offered to new members, but this time there were no demands for integration, No requirements for military surrender. No expectations of cultural compliance. The council has considered your proposal, the new ambassador said. A younger Sithrani, less certain than Velkith, but more open to new ideas. They have authorized me to negotiate an alliance. Earth will retain independence. Your military will remain under your control. In exchange, we ask only for cooperation, friendship, a chance to learn from each other. Admiral Joe listened carefully. She asked questions. She demanded clarifications. She refused to accept anything less than true equality. And, in the end, she signed her name next to the ambassador's mark on a document that would change galactic history forever. When she stepped outside, the Defiance was waiting in the harbor. But it was no longer alone. Rising from the waters around it came 6 more ships. The resolve, the persistence, the audacity, the vigilance, the fury, and the hope. 7 battleships built in secret, now standing proud under an open sky. Humanity accepts your offer of friendship, Joe announced. Her voice carried across the water by hidden speakers. But understand this, we will not be governed. We will not be pacified. We will not kneel. She looked up at the stars, visible even in the daylight if you knew where to look. A P, if you come as friends. We will stand beside you against anything this galaxy throws our way. That is who we are. That is what we do. The galaxy had held its breath when the battleship rose. Now, at last, Kit could breathe again, but it would never forget the lesson it had learned. Somewhere in the vast darkness of space, on a small blue world orbiting an ordinary yellow sun, there lived a species that refused to bow. A species that had looked up at the stars and seen not wonder, but challenge. A species called humanity, and the galaxy would never be quite the same.
The shuttle landed on the deck of the Defiance. The delegation stepped out into the salt wind, their feet touching human metal for the first time. Around them, armed soldiers stood at attention, their weapons held ready but not aimed. Professional. Disciplined. Dangerous. Commander Droth's claws twitched toward his sidearm. Every warrior instinct in his body screamed warnings. These were not the frightened primitives he had expected. These were soldiers, real soldiers, the kind who had seen battle and survived. Ambassador Velkith took the lead, as protocol demanded. She approached the gray-haired woman with careful steps, her compound eyes studying every detail. The woman was older than most humans in fighting shape. Lines marked her face like a map of hard decisions. Her uniform bore medals and marks that Velkith did not recognize, but she understood their meaning. This woman had earned her place through blood and fire. "I am Ambassador Velkith of the Galactic Concord," she began. "We come in peace too. I know who you are," the woman interrupted. "I am Admiral Catherine Joe, commander of the United Nations Shadow Fleet. You may call me Admiral Joe." She gestured toward the massive tower that rose from the ship's center. "Please, follow me. We have much to discuss." The delegation followed her across the deck. Orvax floated in his water suit, sensors scanning everything. Doom stumbled along behind, still clutching his skull. Droth walked with his hand on his weapon, watching every shadow. The inside of the Defiance was nothing like Concord vessels. There were no soft lights or curved walls or pleasant colors. Everything was metal and concrete and hard edges. Pipes ran along the ceiling. Warning signs covered the walls in bright red letters. Crew members moved through the corridors with purpose, nodding to the Admiral, but staring at the aliens with cold eyes. They entered a large room deep in the ship's center. Screens covered the walls, showing maps and data streams and images of space. A round table dominated the center, surrounded by chairs designed for human bodies. Admiral Joe took her seat and gestured for the aliens to do the same. "I apologize for the chairs," she said. "We did not have time to prepare for your specific body types. We have had only 73 years after all. Velkith's antennae twitched. 73 years? I do not understand. Admiral Joe pressed a button on the table. A holographic image appeared above them. It showed a small metal object, roughly the size of a human head. Concord markings covered its surface. We found this in 1953, Joe explained. It crashed in one of our northern regions. At first, we thought it was a satellite from another country. But when we examined it, we realized the truth. We were not alone in the universe, and someone was watching us. Droth leaned forward, a long-range observation probe. Standard equipment for mapping primitive species. Yes, we figured that out eventually. Joe's voice grew harder. We also figured out what happened to the primitive species you mapped. We captured fragments of your communications. We decoded your databases. We learned about the Galactic Concord and its method of welcoming new species. She pressed another button. Images flashed across the screens. Alien worlds. Alien species. Records of first contact missions dating back thousands of years. You arrive with smiles and gifts, Joe continued. You offer technology and medicine and protection. And in exchange, you ask only for cooperation, integration, compliance. The word dripped with contempt. The species that join you give up their armies. They give up their governments. They give up their identity. They become another cog in your machine. Velkith tried to speak. The Concord brings peace and prosperity to. The Concord brings control. Joe cut her off. And humanity will not be controlled. She stood, placing her hands flat on the table. When our leaders discovered the truth, they faced a choice. They could reveal your existence to our people and watch as panic tore our world apart. Or they could prepare, in secret, in silence, for the day when you finally arrived. That is impossible, Orvax bubbled. You are a fragmented species. Your nations fight each other constantly. You could never. We fight each other because there is nothing else to fight. Admiral Joe smiled that cold smile again. Give us a common enemy and we become something else entirely. Something your Concord has never faced. She activated another display. Ship schematics filled the screens. The Defiance and 6 others. Massive vessels built in hidden shipyards beneath the oceans. Crewed by soldiers recruited from every nation on Earth. Armed with weapons specifically designed to counter Concord technology. 7 battleships, Joe said. 35 years to design. 20 years to build. 15 years to train the crews. All done in complete secrecy. All done without your knowledge. She paused. You thought we were primitives burning fossil fuels and killing each other over scraps. You were wrong. Elder Thum finally spoke, his voice weak and strained. The mental discipline required to hide this from my abilities. How many minds were involved? 12,000 people know the full truth, Joe answered. Another 100,000 know pieces. Every one of them has kept the secret for their entire lives. We told them the galaxy was dangerous. We told them our survival depended on silence. She shrugged. They believed us. Because it was true. The room fell silent. The aliens stared. At the human woman, trying to process what they had learned. A species 1 generation removed from their first flight to space had somehow developed technology rivaling mid-level Concord powers. Not through theft. Not through help. Through sheer, stubborn, furious determination. Now, Admiral Joe said, sitting back down. Let us discuss terms, as equals. The stars had seen many things. They had watched empires rise and fall. They had witnessed the birth of countless species and the death of many more. But tonight, aboard the diplomatic cruiser called the Harmonious Understanding, the stars watched something new unfold. Ambassador Velkith stood at the observation window, her tall insectoid body perfectly still. Her compound eyes reflected the blue marble floating in the darkness ahead. Earth, a small world orbiting a yellow sun in a forgotten corner of the galaxy. The planet looked peaceful from here, wrapped in white clouds and blue oceans. "We will arrive in 3 hours," said the ship's pilot, a small furry creature with 6 arms. "Shall I inform the delegation?" "Yes," Velkith clicked. Her mandibles moved with practiced grace. She had done this many times before. First contact was always the same. A primitive species would detect the approaching ship. They would panic. They would beg. And then they would accept the generous offer to join the Galactic Concord. It was always the same. The delegation gathered in the main chamber. 4 species sat around a circular table, each representing a different aspect of the Concord. Velkith represented diplomacy. She had welcomed 37 species into the fold over her long career. Each one had followed the same pattern. Commander Droth of the Kethra sat to her left. He was a massive reptilian creature, covered in green scales that shifted color with his mood. Right now, they were a dull brown. Boredom. The warrior saw no challenge in this mission. His people had conquered half the galaxy before joining the Concord. A primitive world held no interest for him. Across from him floated Merchant Prime Orvax, an Orvani trader. His body was mostly water, contained in a transparent suit that allowed him to survive outside his ocean homeworld. Bubbles rose through his form as he spoke. The economic potential is minimal. They still use paper currency in some regions. Barbaric. The final member of the delegation sat apart from the others. Elder Thum of the Malari was ancient, even by galactic standards. His gray skin hung loose on his thin frame. 2 long antennae rose from his forehead, twitching constantly as they read the psychic impressions of everyone nearby. He was a living archive, a recorder of minds. "I have been studying their transmissions," Thum said. His voice was soft, like wind through dead leaves. They broadcast everything into space. Their history, their entertainment, their wars. Wars? Droth's scales flickered with brief interest. They fight among themselves? Constantly. Thum's antennae twitched faster. They have killed millions of their own kind. They fight over resources, over beliefs, over lines drawn on maps. They have developed weapons capable of destroying their entire planet, and they have come close to using them. Orvax bubbled with laughter. Primitives. They will destroy themselves before we even arrive. Perhaps, Velkith said slowly. She had seen violent species before. They were usually the easiest to bring into the Concord. Give them a bigger enemy to fight, and they forgot their old hatreds quickly enough. What else have you learned? Thum was quiet for a moment. His antennae went still. They are loud, he finally said. Their minds burn bright, chaotic, emotional. I have never encountered anything quite like it. When I try to read their broadcasts, I feel overwhelmed. Droth snorted. Emotional creatures are weak creatures. They will bow before us like all the others. The ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel, and Earth filled the observation window. The delegation moved to watch as they approached. Satellites orbited the planet like tiny insects. Primitive rockets left white trails in the atmosphere. Cities glittered on the night side like scattered jewels. Begin standard first contact protocol, Velkith ordered. Decloak the ship. Broadcast our message of peace on all frequencies. The harmonious understanding shimmered into visibility. It was an elegant vessel, all smooth curves and gentle lights, designed to appear non-threatening. The message went out in every language the ship's computers had decoded from Earth's transmissions. People of Earth, we are the Galactic Concord. We come in peace. We offer friendship and knowledge. Do not be afraid. The delegation waited for the response they knew would come. The panic, the fear, the desperate pleas for help or mercy. Instead, something strange happened. Earth, went quiet. The constant stream of radio signals that had leaked from the planet for over a century suddenly stopped. Television broadcasts cut to static. Radio stations went silent. The digital chatter that filled Earth's communication networks dropped to almost nothing. "What is happening?" Orvax asked, his form rippling with confusion. Doom's antennae trembled. "They are talking to each other, quietly. I cannot read the details, but they are organizing, coordinating." On the planet below, military forces began to move. Satellites shifted their orbits. Ships at sea changed course. Aircraft took to the skies in patterns that had nothing to do with commercial flight. Droth leaned forward, his scales now shifting to a deep red. Interest. "They are not panicking. They are preparing," Thum whispered. "But for what?" Ambassador Velkith felt something she had not felt in centuries. A small cold spot in her chest, right where her species kept their hearts. It took her a moment to recognize the sensation. Uncertainty. "Maintain position," she ordered. "They will respond soon enough." All primitives do. But as the hours passed and Earth remained silent, Velkith began to wonder if perhaps this time would be different. The stars watched, as they always did. And somewhere in the void between worlds, something was about to change forever. 11 hours passed. The harmonious understanding hung in orbit like a jewel against the black velvet of space. Inside, the delegation waited. And waited. And waited some more. Ambassador Velkith had stopped pacing 3 hours ago. Now she simply stood at the observation window, watching the planet below. Her compound eyes tracked the movement of ships and aircraft. Her antennae picked up fragments of encrypted signals. Earth was awake. Earth was busy. But Earth was not talking to them. "This is unacceptable," Commander Droth growled. He had been growing more agitated with each passing hour. His scales shifted through angry colors like a storm moving across his body. "We are the Galactic Concord. We have brought peace to 1,000 worlds. We do not wait for primitives. What would you suggest?" Velkith asked without turning around. "Should we attack them? Burn their cities? That tends to make diplomacy difficult." Droth said nothing, but his claws scraped against the table. Merchant Prime Orvax had spent the time studying Earth's economic data. "Their financial markets have frozen," he reported. "All trading has stopped. Their governments are issuing emergency orders. They are behaving as if they are at war," Thum finished. The ancient Malari had not moved from his corner. His antennae had stopped twitching hours ago. Now they hung limp against his skull. "I have been trying to read them, to understand what they are feeling. But there are too many minds, all thinking the same thing." "And what are they thinking?" Velkith asked. Thum was quiet for a long moment. "Not today. That is what they are thinking. Not today. Not ever. Not without a fight." Before anyone could respond, the communication panel chimed. A single message had arrived from the planet below. The delegation gathered around as the computer translated the simple text. "Coordinates," Velkith read aloud. "A location in their Pacific Ocean, and a time. 6 hours from now." She paused, her mandibles clicking with surprise. "They want us to come to them." Droth laughed, a harsh sound like rocks grinding together. "They summon us? We are the Galactic Concord. We have shattered armadas. We will go," Velkith interrupted. The warrior stared at her. "You cannot be serious. Protocol demands respect for indigenous customs during first contact." Velkith turned to face the delegation. "We came here to make friends, not enemies. If they want to meet on their terms, we will meet on their terms. What harm can it do? They are primitives. They have nothing that could threaten us." The shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere 6 hours later. The delegation watched through the windows as clouds parted around them. The Pacific Ocean stretched out below, endless and blue and empty. There was no land in sight. No ships, no aircraft. Just water and sky and the distant horizon. "These are the coordinates," the pilot announced as the shuttle slowed to a hover. "There is nothing here." "They are testing us," Droth muttered. "Playing games." "Wait," Doom said suddenly. His antennae rose from his skull, trembling violently. "Something is coming. I can feel them. Hundreds of minds. Thousands. They are below us. In the water." Orvax pressed against the window. "Impossible." "How could?" The ocean began to move. It started slowly. Bubbles rose to the surface in clusters. The water churned and foamed white. A deep rumble built beneath them, growing louder with each passing second. The shuttle's sensors screamed warnings as something massive approached from the depths. "What is that?" Droth demanded, pulling up scanner data. His scales had gone pale. "There's something down there. Something big. Something." The water exploded. A shape burst through the surface, rising on pillars of foam and spray. It climbed higher and higher, revealing itself piece by piece. First came weapons. Massive gun barrels that could shoot projectiles the size of ground cars. Missile tubes arranged in neat rows. Strange devices that pulsed with energy the scanners could not identify. Then came the hull. Black metal, scarred and dented from testing. Angular and brutal, without any of the smooth curves that marked Concorde vessels. This ship had not been built to look friendly. It had been built for one purpose, only. War. The vessel stopped rising when its deck cleared the water. 2 kilometers of warship now floated before them, water cascading from its sides like waterfalls. Running lights ignited along its spine, cold and blue. And there, painted on the bow in stark white letters, was a name. Ans Defiance. "By the ancient stars," Orvax whispered. "How is this possible? They do not have the technology. They cannot have the technology." The shuttle's computer spoke in a calm voice that seemed almost mocking. "Detecting 17 fusion reactors online. Weapon systems of unknown configuration. Armor composition unknown. Energy signatures suggest advanced shielding. Vessel classification." The computer paused. "Unprecedented?" The hatch opened on the Defiance's deck. Figures emerged. Humans, dressed in dark uniforms, moving with the precision of trained soldiers. They formed 2 lines, creating a path to a single figure at their center. A woman with gray hair and hard eyes stepped forward. Her voice came through the communication system, clear and cold. "We received your message. We have been waiting for this day for 73 years. Welcome to Earth." She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Let us talk." Ambassador Velkith had lived for 400 years. She had welcomed 37 species into the Galactic Concorde. She had seen wonders and horrors beyond counting. But she had never felt so completely unprepared as she did now, sitting across from this gray-haired human woman in the belly of an impossible warship. "You speak of equality," Velkith said carefully. "But you must understand. The Concorde represents 47 species. Trillions of beings. Resources beyond your imagination. We could destroy us?" Admiral Joe finished. "Perhaps. But at what cost?" She activated another display. Star maps appeared, showing the territory controlled by the Concorde. Red markers dotted the edges of the map. Conflict zones. Border disputes. Ancient enemies held back only by the threat of combined Concorde force. "We have studied your situation," Joe continued. "The Concorde is powerful, but it is stretched thin. You face threats on multiple fronts. A war with Earth would be expensive, bloody, and it would send a message to every other species considering resistance." Droth's scales rippled with anger. You dare threaten us? You are one small planet. We could burn your cities from orbit. You could try. Joe turned to face him directly. But you would lose ships, soldiers, resources, and for what? A species that has proven it will never submit? Even if you destroyed every city on Earth, survivors would scatter into the galaxy. We would become your enemy forever. An enemy that never forgets, never forgives, never stops fighting. She leaned back in her chair. Your Concord is built on the idea that all species eventually join peacefully, that the benefits of membership outweigh the costs of resistance. But what happens when a species chooses resistance anyway? What happens when other primitive worlds see that choice is possible? Velkith understood immediately. The true danger was not the Defiance or its sister ships. The true danger was the idea, the possibility that a primitive species could say no and survive. If that idea spread, the entire structure of the Concord could begin to crack. What do you want? She asked quietly. Joe's expression softened slightly. We want what every species wants. Safety, freedom, a chance to grow on our own terms. She paused. We are not fools. We know the galaxy is dangerous. We know that alone, we cannot survive forever. But we will not trade our freedom for protection. We will not become another quiet member of your collection. Then what do you propose? The Admiral stood and walked to the window. Outside, the ocean stretched to the horizon. The sun was setting, painting the water in shades of gold and red. An alliance, she said. A partnership between equals. We will share technology. We will share knowledge. We will work together against common threats. But Earth remains independent. Our governments answer to our people, not to your council. Our military remains under our control. Our culture, our laws, our future, these belong to us. Orvax bubbled with disbelief. The Concord does not make alliances with individual species. The entire system would change, Joe finished. Yes, that is exactly the point. Elder Thum rose shakily to his feet. His antennae extended toward the Admiral, trembling as they searched for deception. For long moments, he stood frozen, reading the surface of her thoughts. She means it, he finally said. Every word. They would rather die than submit. All of them. Every human involved in this project made peace with death long ago. He turned to Velkith, his ancient eyes filled with something like wonder. I have read minds across the galaxy for 1,000 years. I have never encountered conviction like this. Droth moved suddenly, his claws reaching for his sidearm. He was fast, faster than any human could track. But before his weapon cleared its holster, a dozen rifles were pointed at his head. The soldiers had not moved. They had already been aiming at him. They had been waiting for exactly this moment. We studied your species too, Commander, Joe said calmly. We know the Cathar response to perceived weakness is aggression. We prepared accordingly. She nodded, and the soldiers lowered their weapons. Please do not make us demonstrate what else we prepared for. Droth stood frozen, his hand still on his holster. For a long moment, violence hung in the air like a storm waiting to break. Then, slowly, he released his weapon. His scales shifted to a color none of the delegation had ever seen before. Respect. The Concord will never accept this, Velkith said. But her voice lacked conviction. The Concord has never faced a species like us, Joe replied. We are not asking for acceptance. We are stating terms. Take them back to your council. Let them debate. Let them send fleets if they choose. She smiled, and this time there was warmth in it. Just a flicker. Or let them see the opportunity. A species that fights this hard to remain free might fight just as hard for those they call allies. The delegation exchanged glances. There was nothing more to say. The humans had shown their hand. Now it was up to the galaxy to respond. "We will deliver your message," Velka said finally. She rose, her legs unsteady for the first time in centuries. "I cannot promise what the Council will decide. We know." Jo extended her hand. An ancient human gesture. An offer of partnership. "But we will be here, waiting, ready for whatever comes." Velkith hesitated. Then, slowly, she reached out and took the human hand in her own dot. It was warm. Stronger than she expected, and it did not tremble at all.